This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks show number 366, recorded on August 16th, 2018. Here on Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way in our own news reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the Average Guy.TV studios here in a beautiful Bellevue, Nebraska. We're in that in-between time. Kind of fall is kind of wanting to be here, but it's Kevin, I don't know about you. You're up north of me. It's thunderstorm season again. It seems like we have them rolling through every couple of days. You guys getting much of it?
We are not. We're actually really dry right now, so it's been we at least got rid of some of the heavy humidity, so it's actually been kind of nice with mid 80s, lower humidity, but we could sure use some rain. So
yeah, well, it's coming. We've got some. I don't know. Maybe it's not coming your way. We're a little farther south than you, but we've had a lot. It's been green all summer, really green here in Omaha. So it's been kind of nice. I don't know about you. I'm ready for the bugs to die and the winter to be here. So. Of course, we post a show with world-class show notes each week out at theaverageguy.tv. You know, they're actually already written. So any link we mention, anything that's out there, head over to the show notes. It'll be at theaverageguy.tv//HGG366. Don't forget, rate and review and subscribe on Apple Podcasts if that's the way you do it. If you're on YouTube and you're watching, you can subscribe out there. Great way to get it done. Don't forget, our mobile app is available, still sponsored by LastPass for the next couple weeks. And then actually our Patreon subscribers will be the new sponsors for the app. We'll make some change over there in the app. Or if you're listening and you want to get a year worth of whatever you want to promote at theaverageguy.tv, there might be a spot open for you. LastPass is not going to renew in August here at the end of the month. And if you'd like to take that spot for them for a year, you can contact me, Jim at theaverageguy.tv. And then don't forget, stay around for a little bit of crypto. Here at the very end, we'll have some. It won't be as long. Kevin hasn't done as much crypto as everybody else, but we'll have a crypto conversation here at the very end. Well, Kevin, I alluded to you, but you are a friend of the show. You've been on a bunch of times. Welcome back to Home Gadget Geek.
Thanks for having me. It's always great to be on.
How are things with you? You've changed jobs and done some other things. Is that from a personal life standpoint, everything good for you?
Getting better all the time. This year I decided from a health point of view, we all need to take better care of ourselves. So I had my right knee replaced April 2nd, and I had my left knee replaced June 12th. And if anybody is in that mode of needing knee replacement, just go ahead and do it. It's a pain. Your muscles have to relearn what to do. So, from a job point of view, the interviews are happening. So the job market's looking up right now. I've got a couple of things cooking. So good. Hopefully things turn around there pretty quick as well.
Well, I want to say thanks. You're a big contributor. Mike and I have shifted kind of the focus of the podcast into the Facebook group. We've actually also, the newsletter is going to become a kind of an important thing. Actually, you've inspired this, Kevin, with all the deals that you post in there all the time. And I know you also do that at the Home Server Show forums. So you're getting double duty, getting it done that way. But you have been really instrumental in the years that you've been hanging around the community of just being the guy who finds the deals. And I always appreciate that. In fact, one deal tonight, we'll talk about here in just a second. You just find great deals. How do you stay on top of all of that? You got to have some kind of mechanism or some kind of system because you find the good ones.
I spend way too much time on the internet.
Well, don't we all? I mean,
I need to get out and hang out with people more often. I've got kind of my usual suspects, people that places I watch for. Just the woot.coms, thrifter.coms, deal of the day, CNET Cheapskate. I just have a bunch of them tagged, and you can wander through them pretty quickly. I've got a couple other things that I just do some searches on. There's a couple of forums out there that have some good deal posting area. So a lot of times I find them there, but it seems like especially with the SSDs as of late, I've been having so many people ask me, can you help me put a new SSD in my laptop, and what's the best deal? So that's ones where I'm kind of out searching for them myself and finding them that way.
Yeah, well, you've inspired 2 SSD topics over the last couple of weeks here on the show, and we don't have one scheduled tonight, but it really you caused me to kind of reset my, when I think about SSD prices, kind of reset my expectations. And 15 cents a gig is kind of that spot now. I hadn't thought of it in those terms of like, okay, what am I watching for? What's a good deal? What math am I going to do to kind of determine it's a good deal? You had posted that AData one that we posted over to the averageguy.tv if you want to go over there and grab that out of the newsletter area. But 13 cents a gig. And so I think we're probably on the downhill side of 15 cents. How long do you think before we start seeing some 10 and sub 10 cent, per gig prices come on SSDs?
I think I'm kind of thinking you're going to see some real hot deals at Black Friday as they try and clear out some of the older inventory, and the semiconductor fab guys are looking at shrinking dies, and I think that's slated to be like early next year. So I'd say through the end of the year here. And I think listening to some of your previous podcasts, I think you guys kind of nailed it too, is that 13, 15 cent a gig kind of price point is probably going to be 1 terabyte and up. They're not going to invest a ton in smaller ones. So it's kind of that when I'm helping people find deals, it's kind of that, do you want the best bang for the buck, the best price per gigabyte, or is it, hey, I got $50 to spend on an SSD. What's the biggest SSD I can get for $50? And those are the kind of trends we're seeing hop in right now. And I think you nailed it, is in one of your previous casts, is you look at, laptops go out the door with 1 terabyte spinner in them because that's what's popular, and that's generally plenty big for the average personal user. And the average desktop out there probably has a 2 or 3 terabyte drive that comes out of it. So now all of a sudden, if you look that if you just paid regular price, you're probably about $100 for a 2.5 inch 1 terabyte drive, maybe a 2 terabyte, and you're about the same for a 1 terabyte SSD. So we're getting down to, we're not quite at price parity, but we're getting right down there.
Yeah, it is one of those pieces, though, that if you think you could go just about half price and just about 500 gig on SSD. And so if you don't need all the space, you still may find some pretty good deals. They're not going to be exponentially cheaper, and they're not going to be all that much more expensive, but you could go a 500 gig or 250 and be pretty reasonable. In a lot of cases, those 250s are right around $40.
Yep.
And that's a really nice price point for folks to get in on. For most people, 250 is all you really need. And so they could get in, get it done, get it installed. It would be enough for Windows or whatever that you're using. In a nice price point, $40, Amazon, you get free shipping. And you don't have to go the full gamut for that. So Kevin, thanks for kind of bringing those deals into into our group. Again, a reminder, we're going to be posting those to the Facebook group. So facebook.com/groups/the average guy. If you're not a Facebook guy, I'm going to add this to the newsletter. And so maybe 1 or 2 times a week, I'll send out a note if we've got a particular deal that's going on. For the Amazon affiliate link, which is back for me, I shouldn't send those in emails. So I'm going to post them to the site, to the newsletter site, and then I'll send you an email that says, hey, come take a peek at this if you want to take advantage of it. So it's available. Today in the show notes, everything we mention is going to be posted in the show post. So if you go to HGG 366, all the deals that we talk about, including all the proper links, are available out there, and you can head out there and get those as well. One quick thing before we get started. I know it sounded like we already got started, but I was Dave McCabe, had me on Reset. Dave and I haven't podcasted in, since we did the big burst show, I don't know, 6 months ago, maybe 8 months ago. I can't remember what that was. But I was on Reset FM, or I was on Reset 49. So if you go to reset.com or .fm, I'm messing that up all the way, 7 ways to Sunday there. Reset.fm/49 get you there. And a fun, very long. This is not an in and out podcast. We are on for about an hour and 30, hour and 40, but fun to catch up with Dave if you want to head over to reset.fm and get that done. All right, Kevin, one of the things I do want to talk about a little bit in home automation, Dave and I talk on Reset 49 about home automation's kind of gotten boring. And actually, I think we're seeing that in some of the prices. You put a post, and I'll throw this in the chat room as well. It'll be in the show notes. But Amazon's got some deals, kind of some starter deals, right? Some $10 kind of a light bulb and a plug. Let's talk a little bit about that. What's on that link? It still works today, so I threw it in the chat room. Talk a little bit about what they're giving away for $10.
So the things they're focused on is TP-Link has a product line they call CASA, K-A-S-A, and they have switches and outlets and some light bulb products. They've got their HS105 smart plug, which is a nice one because it's very small, and you could put 2 of them on an outlet. They don't block. A lot of those smart plugs are too big. They cover the outlet above it. And then they've also got the Lifix mini white smart bulbs. So great deals on these things, $10 each. And then they've got a whole list below there of 20% off, lots of other things. The subline message of this that I've been kind of looking at. So I've got a SmartThings hub, and I've got lots of integration, and I've got some automation going on, and Z-Wave connectivity. And the thing that caught my eye about a lot of this stuff is it's Wi-Fi based, and you don't need a hub. And, I tended to find, as you said, home automation kind of got stagnated, I think, because those of us who got into it really heavy, it doesn't always work. It breaks often. It's not 100% there. And I'd run into so many people who are just kind of like, yeah, I want to turn a few lights on and off, or I want to do, some individual things. And the Wi-Fi idea behind these makes it really, quite easy to get into it. If you go with a couple of different vendors, you're probably going to have an app for each vendor. So one of the promises of a SmartThings or an Insteon or Wink or some of these was one app. You'd be able to put all your stuff in one app. Everybody I know who does Insteon or SmartThings still uses the individual apps from a lot of the other stuff. So I just find the TP-Link stuff is affordable. It's Wi-Fi based. You can do some automations with if this then that or some of the other automated functions. But the other one that I've looked at and I've started to see some deals on that's Wi-Fi based is some of the D-Link products. And they as well have some smart plugs, but they have the one sensor that, if I was to tell people to get involved with or to do anything with home automation, D-Link has a water monitor, a Wi-Fi based water sensor. So for your floor drain in the basement, or your something under your water heater or your sink or whatever else, I've seen these down as low as under $50. A couple of people have them for $45, but no hub, you can jump into it, and those are some of the things I look at from a safety point of view as an easy way to get into this deal.
Yeah, it's that plug that is as part of this link that's out there. This part of the deal that's going on Amazon right now. I actually bought, so $10. You get a code SMART10, I think, is the code that you use over at Amazon. Use the link on our site if you can, because that helps. Every little bit helps. And because I bought years ago, I bought an old D-Link. In fact, it's a DSP W215, one of the original early plugs. And I used the Bitdefender box kind of as my main router here in the house. And of course, it scans everything on the network and has found 4 vulnerabilities with it. And it has never, it's always had, they're not updating the firmware. I've checked. It's like D-Link has completely abandoned this plug. Like this is one of the other drawbacks to home automation is some older equipment is abandoned. Like companies have gone out of business. They're not interested anymore. They've been bought and sold. They've been, right. All these kinds of things. Just, I think at the iDevice line, I mean, it was iDevices. They sold it to somebody else that sold to Weber. And Weber bought some stuff. They now have their own branded thing. iDevices is back in the game with something else. And so there's been a lot of turnover in that space. So I bought this plug at $10. It retails, it's $27, and they give you a $17. That code takes $17 off. But one, I bought it to replace this one that's vulnerable. So I'm going to take it off the wall, smash it, and recycle it at Best Buy. But two, the other thing I look for a lot, Kevin, in this is that can it integrate with an Echo, right?
Yes.
Does it have Amazon capabilities? Because we're a house now. We control all the lights. By the way, another problem when you think about this home automation stuff is when things are attached to light switches, and like, you have your family members. This was hard. They turn off the light.
Yep.
And then it never works again until you turn the light back on and re-enable it. And from time to time, the studio lights here that are in the podcast studio here are set. I tell the device, hey, turn on the studio lights, and they pop on. Doesn't work every time. From time to time she says, I don't know what you're talking about. And so it gets a little frustrating. But I did purchase that one. It's a miracle that the Bitdefender box found it and found vulnerabilities in it, which I knew they were there. So that'll get replaced. Two, just good to have another device. This one doesn't monitor your power like some of the other ones done. Have you done that at all? Where I've gotten those switches that are doing it. Do you find yourself going back to it very often to kind of check and see what it's doing?
Not necessarily. The so in the TP-Link products, and thanks for bringing up the Alexa thing. That was the this CASA product line. The whole product line from TP-Link supports Echo, Google Assistant, and actually Cortana. So all are covered there.
Well, and Cortana and Amazon are joining as of this week, so that'll cross as well.
So the CASA, the HS110 family is the smart one that has smart monitoring in it. Where I've really used that is down in the lab when I'm testing equipment. Everybody kind of wants to know, hey, how much power did that draw? When I was doing some mining, it gave me a way to better track how much electricity I'm drawing off this box versus what I'm doing with it. But and that's what earlier when I was saying, the whole smart thing, Insteon thing, buying a hub, maybe Alexa or Google Assistant or whatever you use, maybe that becomes your hub. That almost ends up being kind of your focal point to talk to all your devices, because if all your devices can talk through that, then that becomes your unifying point of these products.
Yeah. I have a Philips Hue system that has its own hub, but that's the only hub I have. It has some integrations in it. So there's some things where I can run it through that. Amazon has an app Philips has an app where you can integrate other things with it. Of course, you can get it all set up on your Amazon device and it'll run some things through it. So it's you can have different companies all coming in on different things, like you said, with different apps. There are some, and I think Amazon is going to be the unifier on this, right? It's just the motivations are right there for it to work with everybody. I have an Echo that sits on my desk. Should be careful now how loud I say that because she'll wake up. But that's the basement control for us. And so all the lights in the basement, and we have an overhead light, and there we have a litter box light that's on down here. The studio lights are on that. I'm still using what's super funny is I still have a set of lights that is on a remote. So, you can turn those on and turn those off. And you think, you know what? You know how often this works? Every time. Every time it works. And yet it's funny. We have some folks, even some of my kids and their spouses, they'll come to the house and they'll forget what the commands are to turn the lights on, and they'll be like, and we'll find them, they'll have done something else, they'll have turned them off and try to turn them on and they can't get them on. So you almost need to post signs, like, hey, if you're going to turn, here's the book. If you're going to turn lights on in the basement, these are the commands to get it done. It shouldn't be that way, but it still kind of is, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, and my cousin's a building contractor. He mostly does light industrial commercial, but he and I were chatting about this, and there's a big, I shouldn't call it a big controversy, but amongst the home builders, there's getting to be folks now who say, I don't want any light switches in the house. I just hardwire all the outlets and I'll put smart bulbs in all the outlets. I don't need switches. But of course, then the argument is, well, how do you turn the lights on when you first get in the house? And is that really the best practice? And how do you future-proof the house? So it's an interesting discussion about what you can get by with versus what is probably the best route for, making your house sellable later on to someone who maybe doesn't want all the automation you've put together.
Yeah, Mark Robson in the chat room sent a link in for some switch guards. So they're just big plastic. They're really ugly plastic pieces that go over your switch. And I said to him, yeah, those are super ugly. He goes, yeah, but they'll stop from getting the lights turned off. And I want to say, yeah, but so will just hardwiring them with no switch. Just if in some, and in some cases I feel that way. You're like, we got to be a little bit smarter about this. It's causing us, because we're retro fitting all this home automation into our homes, and this hasn't been around long enough for us to really think through all the ramifications of what does a truly smart house look like, and how would you wire it differently, knowing that you don't want people to accidentally turn the lights off. Or what do you do when there's a power outage? Or what do and when the power comes back on, does that reset everything? Do you, I just think there's some questions that have to be answered.
And I always come back to the, many years ago, I was out in Boston, I think, for a meeting, and I picked up one of our vendor people at the airport, and he gets in the car, we're talking a little bit, and he gets a call on his cell phone, and it turns into something I think we've all had to do before. Okay, no, turn the TV on. Now turn the DVD player. Now turn the receiver on. Yeah. Okay, not with that. No, not with that button. It's on input 3. and of course, you can hear the screaming in the background. I just want to put a movie on for the kids.
Exactly. Yeah, it should be easy. And even when everything works right, it's convoluted at times. I think it'll get better. And I think as we think about the smart home in the future and people rewire, I think it's going to require that switch. It's going to need to require some rethinking. What does that switch do? Emily says in the chat room that her Mark must have apparently covered some of her switches because she just couldn't learn to not turn them off. And that it is a habit of, and I've got a light that's out and on a porch that's maybe the farthest away from the Amazon device you can be in the house. So to control it by your voice, you really have to kind of shout, and that's not super convenient at night when we leave that light on so the kids have a light on when they come in, and so you really got to walk into the kitchen to turn that light off. And in most cases that works, but again, it's not perfect, and it's great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not bashing home automation. It's just we got some work. I think we got some work to do to get us to that point where it's a little more seamless, don't you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And one of my indicators on that is Apple is taking a beating over the whole HomeKit deal, and I always use them as a litmus test of for them to jump in with both feet and say everything's cool and let's roll with it. It's got to be an Apple-like product. It's just got to work and everything's got to function right, and it's not there yet. But it's a great time. It's a good topic to discuss because I think for too long, just through my own talking about it, it kind of left it with people that they needed to decide whose hub they were going to jump into. And that's almost like a team kind of deal is, what team are you rooting for? And you jump into these hubs. Well, now I'm coming to find you really don't need to do that. You can just, if you want to turn some lights on and off, turn the coffee machine on in the morning to get the coffee going. You can do this stuff fairly easy. And now, really affordably, anything that's home automated and it's under $20-25 is a great deal.
Yeah. It's getting better. I still think we have a ways to go in our next house. I'll spend more time thinking about it. I'm not sure, I really think I need more of these Amazon listeners throughout the house if I'm going to make it scalable and we're going to turn kind of everything on with it. I'd also love to see, one, you mentioned this. I'd love to see more integration with my iPhone, and I'd love to do it with Siri where I could whisper.
Yes.
So, because at night I don't want to shout across the house to turn things off. So if there was some Amazon Apple integration, that'll never happen. So I don't even know why I'm saying it. But I think there's a ways to go. So also in the Facebook group this week, Mike Uyghur, who's out tonight, put in a post about dash cams. Now, what's interesting is if you watch YouTube, just go to YouTube and type in dash cam. man, you can see some awesome stuff. It's all in Russia, it seems like. Russia has a real big fraud problem with insurance, and I think China as well. I think that may be another area where there's a lot of dash cams. Kevin, they haven't really caught on in the United States. I think, yes, we have some people using them. And man, in Russia, you have a front and a back cam. You do both, right? You're the most of those guys are doing both. We haven't done it. Some of that I think has been expense. I think some people have seen dash cams, they've been 150 or 200 or $300 to put those in. It's kind of like the old days of GPSs, right? Remember when TomToms were $179 and nobody buys those anymore. But Mike found, and we'll put the link. I'll put the link here in the chat room here in just a second. But Mike found one on Amazon for 40 and has really liked it. Kevin, first of all, what do you think about dash cams?
When he brought that up, it's one of those things where I think, and I guess what I've heard is pretty much exactly what you've said. I think at one point it was in Russia to get a break or a deal on car insurance, you could put in dash cams, and as long as you had them recording all the time, you'd get a break. Now I think my understanding is to get insurance at all in Russia, you have to have a dash cam. So it's kind of driven the market from that point of view. I'm a little surprised that the car manufacturers haven't just gone ahead. We've got the rear view mirror up there, and it's the perfect spot to mount something on there. I think it's a great idea, because it would take a lot of the especially as sad as it is to say we've got so much distracted driving due to technology, it would be good to have technology that keeps us honest, so to say, something that people can go back to and figure out what really happened in an accident, or help reconstruct what went on, what occurred. So I think it's great technology. The cameras have come so far. You just think how all the recording media, the size of storage, all of the optics have hit a point in time where you can get a great camera, as Mike found, for $40.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he says in his post, again, facebook.com/groups/the average guy. He says, I installed this one earlier, and this is, I think, it's a Crosstour, and I'm sure it's directly from China. But he said, I installed this one earlier this week and was surprised by the quality and the ease of use for the $40 price tag. It's one of those that it's set it and forget it kind of item that starts recording when you start the car and it stops when you turn it off. It does not have any of the GPS or any of the other fancier features, but it does what I need it to do, recording while driving. I also like that it was able to use a long mini USB cord and plug it into my 4-port Anchor USB car charger that I already used for my phone and Bluetooth adapter. That's crazy that he's got a 4-port charger in his car. But anyways, for his phone and his Bluetooth adapter, what brands are you guys using? And so this is a great time to jump out into the Facebook group. And if anybody else is using a dash cam, I just don't know, Kevin, to think about my audience. It's mostly US, although it goes to international. But it just hasn't, I don't see that many dash cams here in the US. For $40 though, I may give this a try. Mm-hmm. I mean, this may be the right entry point to be like, hey, it's time to start thinking about getting one of those. I don't know if I need it. Do you know, are there any insurance companies here in the United States that are offering kind of discounts for dash cams? Are you familiar with anything like that?
As we were talking, I did a quick search and I don't see any yet. I know my insurance company, not to fade back to the home automation thing we just spoke about, but American Family offers discounts for smart smoke detectors and things like that. So all it would take is one of the insurance companies to do that and give you a break on it. The one thing I did see, just doing a quick search here, which does make sense to me, is I've had this come up in my own life at one point in time. Police forces in the United States are very anti-blocking your vision stuff. I had something hanging from my mirror many years ago and I got pulled over for it. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. It was like a little charm or something hanging down there. But and just doing a quick Google search here, it did come back with something about US, negativity towards blocking your view, and the camera would have to put in such a way that it did not block your vision in any way.
Yeah, well, and I think there's a little bit of pushback with U.S. law enforcement about being recorded as well, and that's not a known. They don't like that, and in some cases I can see why. In other cases, they probably need to be, and so that adds another political element into it. Many of them can be put up and hidden behind your rearview mirror, so that it's not blocking your vision. Cyber Skulls in the chat room says need is a very strong word. I tend to look at want. And Emily says she has a 4-port charger in her car. My charger, Mark's phone, daughter's iPhone, and the extra mini USB for charging my portable charger. And, Kevin, I've been using those. I have 2 charging, I have 2 cigarette lighter ports, and we don't even call those anymore. They're for most people, they're charging ports, right? And I have bought 2 dual USB inserts, right? You just put them in there, and then I can get 4 that way. So I guess I don't have a hub. Technically, I don't have a hub in my car, but that's a great way to think about it. I'm sure everybody's jammed up the cigarette lighters with chargers. It's interesting. Like I said, I don't know, Kevin, the problem with some of these kinds of gadgets in your car is if you got to turn it on and turn it off. Now, if this really does what he says, like it comes on, records, turns off, overwrites the card, I don't have to do maintenance on it. It can survive in the sun. I live in Nebraska. It's going to be freakishly hot in the summer. It's going to be butt cold in the winter. I mean, that thing's got to survive 20 below. It's sitting out there, right? It's got to be able to do that. Well, okay. Yeah, maybe it's worth sticking up in the window and seeing. I don't know. It's Mike got me into monitoring. We bought some cameras a couple shows back. There was a good deal on these dealing cameras, and I bought one. And I set it all up, and I checked it for the first day or 2, and then I don't even look at it anymore. As Sighthound, I think I'm using Sighthound, and it's like, I don't know if I'm wired that way. So, link to it is in the show notes. Kevin, anything else as you think about dash cams? It certainly at a $40 price point, this shouldn't stop anybody from having one. This would even put one in the back and one in the front if that's what you wanted to do, right?
Absolutely. And the one thing that does pop into my mind is, as the father of a 13-year-old now who's going to be, a few years away from driving, that was one of the arguments that I heard about this is a little bit of, if the kid driving the car knows that it's recording everything that's going on, does that help, keep them on the straight and narrow, that, they know that dad and mom can have a look at what went on while they were out with the vehicle. So there is one aspect of it that way, and that I think we're going to see more of with some of the insurance companies already have that tool of plugging into the port under the dash on the car and giving you real feedback on how fast the car was going, even some G-force related things with cars that have those sensors.
Yeah, like Jim Kennedy was saying in the chat room, also a G-force sensor that would auto record and save an accident, or if sitting in a parking lot, turn on and record what happened, right? In other words, I'm sensing movement, I'm going to automatically turn on, because he's right. When you're in a parking lot, you're as likely to be hit or struck in a parking lot, somebody jam into your car or a door thing, or back into you, as you would when you're moving. So that's maybe one of those features. This one doesn't sound like it does that. Kind of battery, right? You would think it would need to be battery enabled or something, or it would turn on and do that. So, all the chat room lit up. I'm not sure I've going to be able to get through all the Mark Robson says, I went to a mechanical mount though on the mirror stock. It has a suction cup, but the suction cup, and this is really common, doesn't like the cold, right? Suction cups and cold. So a mechanical mount where it's actually attaching to the back of the mirror. Jim says GPS on his displays direction and speed. I tell you, I've tried to turn, I've tried to get my phone to automatically open Waze whenever I leave a particular area. That has not worked well. I need to, but that's a kind of deal, hey, I'm leaving, turn this on, make this kind of thing happen. And I think you're right, Kevin. You just said that. I'd love to see some integration between this and that port in your car that measures some other things, road conditions or how the car is running or what speed, some of those kinds of things. I know they have GPS speed. So, okay, well, for $40, this is kind of maybe the entry point into, at least if you wanted to try it out for $40, right? That's not too bad.
Yeah. And like you said, this is a great thing about the Facebook group, because this is something I've seen, hadn't thought about, and now it's kind of on my ticker to keep an eye on this kind of thing, for numerous types of reasons.
Yeah.
Before I forget, as we were talking about all the USB ports and charging plugs and things like that, I was down at our family's farm in western Wisconsin. For many of you know, I own way too many tractors for a guy who doesn't farm. I have 13 tractors. One of them is from the late 60s. It's a big tractor. I was showing my daughter how to drive it, and she's looking at all the controls, and this is a good sized tractor, and she grabs one of the knobs and says, "Well, what's that?" And I said, oddly enough, that's a cigarette lighter. And it was very common in the 60s to put a cigarette lighter on the tractor. Sure. And she's looking at it, and she pulls it. I pushed it in and let it heat up for her and then I realized she's 13 and she's never seen a cigarette lighter, because all of the cigarette lighter ports on cars, they don't come with the lighter anymore. It's just a port for you to plug your charger into.
And isn't that funny? Like, there are more efficient ways.
Oh God.
to do power than a cigarette lighter. Like, Nathaniel was saying in the chat room, his car came with 4 USB ports, and at least 2 of the cigarette charger ports. Like, we could do a better, like that port collects junk. Things can fall in it. Like it, I tell this story all the time about a grandmother or about a mom who was cooking a ham and cut the end off of it, and her daughter was watching it when she put it in the oven. And the daughter said, "Mom, why do you always cut the end off your ham?" She says, "I don't know, Grandma, that's what Grandma did." And so Grandma comes over the next weekend and she remembers. And so she says, "Grandma, why do you always cut the end off your ham?" She's like, "Well, my pan was only this big." And so, like, it's the perfect example of, like, when things change. And the cigarette lighter that port is a perfect example. It may be one of the worst designed for what we're using it for. One of the worst designed ports in the car. We don't need it for the most part anymore. A lot of people don't, and I don't think anybody, even smokers, I don't think are using it. Nobody pushes that thing. It cracked me up on Deadpool when he uses that. He uses that thing against one of the guys. But certainly the auto industry is going to be changing with that, and I think there may be a time, and I don't know, maybe USB is even on its way out as a in the car. Apparently not for this group. Apparently not for this group, but it is an interesting, like, I think we need to rethink our power inside cars.
Yes.
Hey, it wasn't long ago, we were going on a trip and my son had this big old honking laptop that it was one of the old ones, and it just sucks some power. And so he plugged it in through an inverter into a friend's car and blew the circuit. Like, just blew it right out. I felt so bad. So, anyways, this brings up interesting topics as far as we outfit our cars. But speaking of interesting, when we think about things that are changing, we have, a lot of folks listening right now came over from our crypto group, our Burst crypto group. And, Kevin, this time last year, I bought 4 GTX 1060s. I paid $212 for them, which was pretty good price at the time. They had been a little bit cheaper. I think maybe you could have gotten them at the lowest point for $179. And then it went nuts. Like, it just absolutely went crazy. At one point in time, those 1060s, these aren't even top of the line. We're like $400.
Yep.
On the open market. And my kids, so if you look right here, I think if you look right here, you will see the boxes for my 1060s right there. Right.
There you go.
So proudly displayed. My boys came over the other day and like, Dad, you're the problem. We can't get video cards to play games. Like it's your fault. None of my kids are mining. And 1060s aren't that great of miners, but they get me there. But Kevin, you found a deal. I think we're back. I think we're back to regular CPU or GPU prices. And so, guys, GPUs are back on the menu, right? I think if you're in the market, right? Is that across the board, do you think?
It's lowering really rapidly, and in the 212 you gave out, the for my daughter's gaming computer, I bought her a 1060 around Black Friday time last year, and it was 209. I remember getting it on Amazon for 209. So yeah, this 1060 3 gigabit of memory for 199, that's a great deal, and you're seeing those come back into that price range again. The big thing about the interesting thing I find about gaming cards is I never really did a whole lot with gaming cards because I wasn't really a gamer. I'd always, just looked for a decent graphic card or a workstation card, or, I was always swapping or dealing on it. The one thing I will note is, most of the games my daughter plays are things on Steam, and she's big into The Sims. And I didn't think a graphics card would do all that much, but I was blown away by going from whatever we had in it previously to this 1060. In The Sims, you've got all this texture of the houses the people live in and the furnishings and that, and it was amazing how much better that looked. So just that rendering of that even makes a difference. So even if you're a mild gamer, a 1060 is a great card. It's always hard to equate to kind of the NVIDIA versus Radeon camps, the two major camps that way. The 560 in AMD's Radeon family is not up to the 1060 level here, but I've seen those for somebody had one for $150 with a $20 mail-in rebate, so getting down around the $125 range. And then Newegg had some 570s, which from the Radeon family. They were 4 gig cards. I'm gonna have to look those up quick. I was kind of surprised that they were like 229 or something like that.
Yeah, reasonable again, right? I mean, I think we're almost back to pre-crypto prices on GPUs. Now, some of that is there's some new cards coming. So Cyber Skulls he saw an EVGA 1070 Ti on Newegg last week, 429 with a free game. He says he's betting that post the 2070s launch, they'll be 350 to 379, which I think both AMD and NVIDIA are producing. Like this whole crypto thing was a huge distraction for all of us as we were buying these cards. They've been developing the next gen, and there's a whole new generation. And holy cow, Kevin, I saw some $5,000 video cards. It's like, what? Are you serious? Some amazing 16 core, stuff you'd put in your PC. And I'm like, wow. Okay. Well, cool, I guess. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but I remember, when not this generation, but maybe the generation before, when video cards really, it used to be one, you didn't need a video card for the average PC consumer. You had onboard graphics that worked out okay. And worst case scenario, you'd buy a 1 gig or a 2 gig card, and it had a dedicated processor and it'd speed things up a little bit. You'd maybe pay $50 or $60 for it. And then when the kids started gaming, I remember them buying, $200 and $300 and $400 video cards. And I'm like, are you kidding me? That's the price of some PCs. I really thought they were going overboard on this. This was years ago, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, maybe even a little bit more. But it really is now. I mean, we are really now in a spot where, man, that market is incredible in what it's doing. And those cards, again, pre-crypto, when folks were using them for games, it has really expanded in what they're doing. If you haven't looked, and some people got so mad during this crypto run, they just stopped looking at GPUs. They're like, this is stupid. I'm not going to pay these prices, and I remember when the cards went from, let's just say this 1060, which was probably $200 in most cases, 179, $200. and those went to 350, 400. People were just pissed, like
Yep.
super angry that they were that expensive. So we've come back around. I think if you've been waiting, if you've been holding off, they're back too, and you can watch. And I don't know if I would buy right now today, because I think, like Cyber Skull says, I think there's going to be some really good deals as they clear out kind of some of these older cards.
I agree. I think if you had a need, um, if you needed a card right now, I would be comfortable buying now, because they're back down to where I would expect them to reasonably be. But as we're coming out with some new cards, this is the time when you start to see real deals on some of the existing. We've been running the 500 series from Radeon for over a year now, or around a year, and the current NVIDIA family's been around for about a year now. So that's about 12 months is pretty long in the tooth for those kind of things. Mm-hmm. So I did drop a link in the chat room there. You were talking about NVIDIA's big announcements. Intel, of all people, kind of one-up them with their announcement on re-entering the graphic GPU business. And, I've worked on and off I've been affiliated with Intel since probably 1981, 82. And Intel is kind of notorious, and they do it for what they feel is a good reason, but they jump in and out of markets. They a lot of people don't realize it, but they bought a graphic card company years ago called Chips and Technology that was one of the only guys out there really doing good VGA graphics for LCDs. And I have to think our growth of tablets and laptops came from a lot of that technology that was released from that. So Intel likes to shake things up, and I think it's interesting that Intel is aiming. They got lots of transistors on a chip, and now they're aiming at shaking up the GPU market. So it'll be interesting to see how well they do. Of course, the big thing with GPUs is getting all those game folks to tune their games to make your GPU be successful or be the best that it can be. But with Intel's clout, a two-way battle is good. Three-way, I think, is fine as well. So it'll be interesting to see what they are able to kind of push towards in that graphic market as well.
Well, they kind of gave up on the mobile market for the most part, and I think they're kind of thinking like the PC market. While for the last quarter actually grew for the first time in I think 15 years or something like that. I'm sure they're seeing growth potential, and of course, they're a little late to the game on this. And again, they saw the popularity. They saw both AMD and NVIDIA let prices go wild during during this run up. Neither one of them would amp up their production for fear that the bottom would fall out. Oh, it did actually. The bottom would fall out on the crypto market and people would stop buying them, which is exactly what's happening right now. And it's interesting they would jump in now. This is a good move for gamers. I just don't know if gamers have that kind of loyalty unless they come in at a different price point. I mean, who realistically, you're either AMD or you're NVIDIA, and you have loyalty to that, and it's kind of a Microsoft move. Like this is like one of those like, oh, all of a sudden, because we can, we're going to throw a bunch of money at this and see if we can make a difference in the market. I think I'm a little leery.
So my next statement is not based on anything that I know, but the only thing, and I've been doing, the one good side of unemployment is it gives you a lot of time to research and study and learn new stuff. Intel is investing a ton of money in AI and augmented reality and virtual reality. So when I saw this graphic, the whole GPU aspect from Intel, I instantly thought of, well, how does this tie into AI with these guys? Or how does this tie into some of the other things that they're doing? So, it could be just, hey, they're selling a ton of video cards. Let's get in on the action there. We've got fab space. We can build one better than anybody else. But I almost have to wonder if it doesn't tie in more directly to some of the other things that they're doing from that point of view.
Well, how great it would have been as a coup. Like if you ever want to get into a market, get in when it's hot. And how much of a coup could it have been if Intel would have surprised the market last year at this time when the prices were skyrocketing to jump in and say, hey, we're basically gonna, this is a 1080 equivalent, or this is a 580 equivalent, whatever, and flood those in at a lower price point, and really disrupt the market, and get some people, because in those days, a whole year ago, all people could, it was hash. Like, how much can this thing hash? Like, I don't care. Just get it. I don't need to be brand loyal at this point. Can I hash that crypto? And so that could have been, man, that would have been a great time to jump in. That's kind of gone. I mean, they kind of missed it. And unless we have a second run or a third run, that would be a good way to kind of enter in and say, hey, or optimize them for the crypto market. Come in and say, hey, here's some things that we can do, and we can do them particularly well. And they'll work as a video card, but these could be opted for crypto, optimized for crypto. And, that might be a niche space where if they actually could do it and prove that it worked better than an AMD or a NVIDIA card, maybe there'd be a chance. It'd be kind of interesting. So, well, interesting to see where this goes on the GPU side. You mentioned Black Friday, and actually we're not that far away from Black Friday. Like, it's unbelievable. Like, holy cow, that's like tomorrow. But I think we've mentioned two things tonight that you want to watch for on Black Friday. One is hard drives, and I think both SSDs, which we mentioned, and some spinners.
Yep.
So I think we're going to see a shift in the spinner space, and there's going to be the 8s have a little long in the tooth. 8 terabytes, a little long in the tooth right now, and I think we're going to see some of that get flushed out as 10s, kind of show up on the market. And then 2, what we're talking about right here, I think we're going to see them flood out what they have, their current inventory, get rid of it.
Yep. And
now might be a good time if you're into that, space, if you're looking for it. That would be a good time to buy. Cyberskull says, yeah, AMD NVIDIA dropped the ball on the mining spec cards. Same price, same performance, less warranty. Yeah, no, there was another opportunity they had to really during the craze to do some things differently, and they didn't. They kind of tried some stuff, and everybody was afraid that these cards would burn out faster. And well, actually, they will. And some of those kinds of things. And how could you redesign a card when heat matters? When you're gaming, yeah, that fan's going to come on from time to time, but the other 17 hours a day, it's going to sit idle, right?
Yep.
Where these cards are just burning all day long. How do we really, they could have had some mining optimized cooling, and some folks were modifying some things and doing stuff with it. But anyways, a good time. If you're thinking about it, if you're a gamer, like, you need to be watching right now till the end of the year, on prices. Kevin, I not every show, but I like to sometimes towards the end of the show talk a little bit about what I'm watching on YouTube, because I've completely stopped watching like TV, even my recorded stuff. I spent all this money to record TV and all that stuff, and I've stopped watching it. In the last 2 weeks, this is one of those little crazy things. I never anticipated this, but I have 2 shows I've gotten turned on to, both around yacht or boat building, like old school 100-year-old boats. Like, this is traditional wood and woodworking and old school and axes and chisels. And there is something for me. And I think the reason I'm bringing this up is because I think there's a lot of listeners that are a lot like me. They like these kinds of, like, you like tractors, right? And I've gotten in. So these 2 shows, again, the links will be in the show notes if you want to get there. One is called Samson Boat Company. And I'll put that link out in the chat room right now. So folks, if you want to take a look at it, this is a guy all by himself is rehabbing a boat called Tally-Ho, which is pretty cool. 109-year-old English yacht that the keel was gone. I mean, it was in pretty bad shape. And he is going back through, he's in Washington State right now. Does a really nice job of video. Very, very satisfying watching his videos and some of the work that he's doing. And then there's another group of guys, and their show is called Acorn to Arabella. Arabella is going to be the name of the boat. I'll throw this in the chat room as well. Acorn to Arabella. And they are doing something similar, except they're building the boat from the ground up. And these are two grassroots efforts. They're getting Patreon subscribers. They don't have a lot of money. I mean, boating is freakishly expensive. If you think CPUs and hard drives are expensive, a good stick of lumber can be thousands of dollars. Especially here in the United States to get really good lumber. And so they're kind of self-funding this. And again, not necessarily tech related, but the craft that's involved. And I don't know about you, Kevin, but I really enjoy watching someone who's a craftsman. These guys poured their own keel, right? The lead keel that's at the bottom of the boat.
Wow.
They poured their own. They in the ground with a form. They melted it down themselves. They steamed these things using a homemade, because sometimes you have to steam the planks to get them to bend and stuff. I've just really appreciated the craftsmanship alone. And there's something about, have you ever sailed? Have you ever done anything, got out on boats or?
I've not sailed myself, but we had to be in the mid 90s, probably mid 90s. We went to Boston and then up Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. We ended in Maine. The best way I can describe it was it was a bed and breakfast on a sailing ship. So we slept on the boat, we ate on the boat, and we sailed around looking at the fall colors. And it's amazing just being in this old sailing ship. Oddly enough, the food was great. An old wood stove. To this day, best lobster I ever had. The last day we were out, the captain dropped sail. We pulled up next to this other boat. I didn't realize until we got up by them, they were pulling in lobster traps. Basically, lobsters came out of traps, went down into the galley into a boiling pot, and you basically walked your lobster down and you came back with your lobster to eat. It was that, it came out of the Atlantic Ocean and into your belly within minutes. Best lobster I ever had.
You don't get much fresher than that. Well, there's something about the craftsmanship, and I bet you find this too in the tractors. There's something about the craftsmanship that's going to last 100 years.
Yep.
When you think about the wood, the way they have to cut it and form it and shape it and take care of it, they're doing all these different things to make sure that it stays stable and is strong. And they have to deal with checking, and they've got to deal with splitting and wood drawing at different speeds and stuff. And I don't know. For me, I have found that terribly satisfying. And I've watched one video after another. I've worked out and watched the videos. I've been binge watching boats, and especially old yachts, 100-year-old yachts or 100-year-old boats. And the thing, it kind of reminds me of when we first started doing this tech podcasting, and it was rogue. Like, there weren't a lot of people doing it. It was we were a handful or a couple handfuls of guys out there. We were doing all kinds of crazy things with this. Even with our meetups, it was kind of crazy, right? People are like, you're doing what? And we were doing all this stuff that was kind of different. And I see both these channels as guys that are really, shipbuilding is not on the list of STEM jobs that are popular today. Right. And these guys are super passionate about it. Many of them are spending their life savings or are working 2 jobs to be able to afford, building these ships is tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. And think about lost revenue and time. So I've appreciated that. The links to the YouTube videos. Kevin, anything you're watching on when we think about YouTube, or anything you're watching out there that?
Well, it's just a couple things on the boating stuff too. It's an art form. I mean, it really is. It's the handcrafting. When you were talking about that, I don't know if you, the actor Nick Offerman has been on several things. Was on Parks and Rec. If you hit YouTube and look him up, he's a big woodworker, and he does some very, very unique things. And a lot of what you're hitting on there is these old tractors I collect. It's gas, spark, and air, and that's it. There's no computer, there's nothing there. And they're fun to work on because they're simple. And it was just, my dad's 87 now, and I was helping him with one of his tractors here a couple weekends ago. One of the older brands, Al's Chalmers. And I was bemoaning the fact that, what the heck is wrong with these Allis-Chalmers tractors? I was trying to take a bolt out of one of them, and I'm like, well, it's 9/16 on one end and it's 1/2 inch on the other end. Why would they do that? And of course, my dad looks at me like, well, back in 1945, when a fella bought this tractor, he only had one set of wrenches. So they were thinking ahead that this was a good thing to not, a 9/16 bolt would have a 9/16 head on a head and a 9/16 burr. They did things so it had a smaller head and a bigger nut on it. So you only needed one set of wrenches. So it's that kind of detail and craftsmanship that we don't even think about these days. It's just the thing is put together and it's disposable. And a lot of this stuff comes from bygone days. To your question on what I'm watching, it's funny. I too there's very little on regular broadcast TV I watch. Although anybody who likes a good comedy, there's a show called Trial and Error that is hilarious. It's absolutely it's a mockumentary kind of thing about the legal system in a small town called Peck. And of course, being a small town called Peck, there's lots of Pecker jokes about different things. And it's one of those shows where last season you saw certain things that are now popping up in this season. East Peck, they were talking about how East Peck was much more innovative than it had been. It's okay for women to drive there, as long as a man walks in front of the car screaming, "Lady driver, lady driver." So this season, you see that in the background. There's a car driving by and there's a guy walking in front of the car screaming, "Lady driver, lady driver." But I digress. I'm catching up a lot on Netflix. I've got a laundry list of things. I want to like Lost in Space's reboot. I'm not quite there yet. It's okay. But we'll see how things go.
I do have Man in the High Castle on my list of things to watch when that hits October 5th on Amazon Prime. That'll be one I'll binge. They'll put all 10 episodes out. It's done over the weekend. Like I can't stop watching it. And season 2 is so amazing. What I need to do is schedule some time. I'm on vacation this week. Maybe I'll go back and watch season 2. It was so good, Kevin, that it's worth watching again. The character development has been awesome. So that's kind of sitting on my radar. But yeah, YouTube is surprising, and there's a lot of junk out there, but there's a lot of folks who are really trying to create community.
Oh yeah.
And they start these projects and they get, one of these boat builders, I instantly joined his Patreon. I was like, okay, I gotta help this guy.
Yep.
And he had a I don't know 1,200 maybe or so on Patreon helping him out, and he's just such a good guy. And you're just like, and he's super real, and he's not pretentious, and people just show up. This is one of the things I love about community, and it kind of our meetups, like when we would just show up together. People just show up at his place. They let him know, hey, I'm coming. I want to help for a couple days, and he's come on over. I'll put you to work, and we'll build this boat. And so it's pretty cool. So again, those links, if you want to join along with me on this boat building, I cannot take my eyes off of it. If you're interested in those kinds of things, again, it's so different than tech, and yet the math, the geometry, the measuring, the craftsmanship, I guess that's what I appreciate. And we've said that word a couple times, but I really appreciate the craftsmanship of what they're building. It does kind of remind me, we've spent a bunch of time, we'll talk about this in the post show, in the Burst community that we've worked on in crypto. This is a community that you just didn't set up the nonces and start mining. Ken was drilling me all the time about, is it optimized? Have you tried this? Have you, and that's kind of the technology craftsmanship. Like, are you always making it better? Are you always enhancing it? Are you always finding ways to do it differently, more efficiently? We're in a pool where everybody, and it's kind of like Home Server Show forums, Kevin, where we don't have a dick out there. You don't have some guy, for the most part, who's that guy, and you're like, and those kinds of communities, building those kind of communities, they don't happen by accident, and they don't happen very often. They have to be in Home Server Show, in the Home Server Show community, which I still think is one of the best communities on the internet. It happens because you guys moderate it, right?
Yep.
And make it good. So some pretty great stuff. Yeah.
I think we all enjoy areas that are supportive, and they're positive. You try and help each other out. You try and add value, and that's what I look at. There've been times when I've privately chastised folks over on home server, and it really comes down to, hey, the comment you made, I get why you said that, but did that help the situation at all? And if the answer is no, well, rethink your comment a little bit.
Yeah.
We're all here to have a good experience and have a positive experience. The other thing I find about home server is sort of the archival value of it. You will find people, just one popped up today of, hey, I hate to bring up this old thread, but can somebody answer this question for me from this older technology? I've got an older microserver. I'm running into this
N40L sitting right here. Yeah.
N40L, and the thing is his question is, you could respond to that question with, the answer's right there, go look for it.
Yeah.
Or you could just point him to it and say, hey, great question, that one comes up a lot, here's your answer.
Yeah. No, and I think how you ask the question or is just as important as how we answer it.
Yep.
And that's what makes great community, is when people are understanding in both the way they ask and the way they answer. It is hard sometimes. I've been in the community for a while, and in the podcasting community, I do Ask the Podcast Coach on Saturday mornings. And, in the Facebook groups all the time, it's like, hey, what's the best microphone? And you're like, seriously? Like, but you have to, you got to say, okay, well, here's the deal when you're doing that. So some great stuff. Hey, I'd like to hear from you. What are you watching on YouTube? Let's just do that. Jim@theaverageguy.tv, or you can post it in the comments. Although nobody does comments on our page. So send me an email, Jim@theaverageguy.tv. I'd love to know what you're watching on YouTube. Kevin, it's gotten so bad for me on YouTube that I run out of, like, I'll find a new series and then I'll go back binge as I'm working out. And then they only produce every week. So, like, then I'm out again. I've caught up and I'm like, oh shoot, my thing I've said this on the show here for a while. My eyes were glued to Hawaii. And so I was watching every update out of Hawaii. And it's, that thing has stopped for the most part. And so not as exciting now because it stopped. And then I've been watching the reconstruction of the Oroville Dam in Oroville, California. That thing had 2 winters ago, nearly failed, which would have been catastrophic, by the way. That would have been a disaster of epic proportions. Kiewit, who's out of Omaha here, is the one fixing it. So it's kind of cool to watch them. The Department of Water Resources in California has done the best job of documenting that thing and putting it on YouTube. They have great videos. And it's not just here it is and here's some pictures. They're flying drones. They've done some 360 drone stuff, right? Where they fly the drone up the spillway and you can control the camera as it's going up and see all the various things. That is really, really cool. That that here is, they're just rebuilding the dam, but there's again, back to Craftsman. These are big equipment. I mean, I feel like I'm 7 again, like trucks, dozers, backhoes, bucket loaders. They're rolling millions of pounds of roller compacted concrete, and they're not just pouring it, they're shaping it into this gentle thing that, if they ever need to use the emergency spillway, the way the water comes out of the dam will be like a work of art. And you think they didn't have to do it that way, but somebody decided, let's make this thing look cool. If we're gonna spend $1 billion fixing this thing, let's make it look cool. So so Jim says, Cybermancer in our group, he's the one who stopped the lava. And they said, oh no, the lava, not the dam. Luckily the dam, in both cases, luckily it stopped in both ways. Kevin, thanks for jumping in and filling in for Mike Uyghur tonight.
Absolutely.
And filling in. Let's just spend 1 minute on this. You have you've gone against the grain a little bit on the barbecue side, and we've talked about this before, but you have a sous vide. And you've been using it, and you put in the show notes, it's barbecue blasphemy. I'm not so sure it is. It certainly is a barbecue aid. How are you using it?
Well, it's I wanted to do an experiment. I feel like I'm a pretty good barbecue guy. Pretty much all charcoal. Haven't gotten into a smoker as of yet. But as I've watched Yeah, I was having flashbacks to my younger days and my wife inviting people over for a barbecue and telling them we're going to have chicken. And although I'm good at barbecuing, in my younger days, it was like, well, is this going to be dry briquettes of unedible chicken, or is this going to be potentially salmonella dying kind
Exactly.
of chicken?
Exactly.
Uh, and it struck me that, a barbecue should be a fun event, a fun thing to, and I was, in looking back of my memories, it was always stressful, hurrying, getting things done. And so the experiment I did was just to take some chicken thighs, put them in a bag, get them prepped. I like to do this Greek chicken thing with a little, marinate them overnight with a balsamic vinaigrette type of thing. Threw them in the SV and got them heated up and ready to go. At the same time, while that's timing out, and obviously you have to figure that out with those, is how much chicken do you have and how long is it going to cook. But timing wise, you can get that ready. The chicken's cooked, it's edible, it's ready to go. And that idea of just throwing it on and blackening it up a little bit to make it look prettier. I think my portrayal is for folks who are afraid to barbecue for a large group of people, like more than 5 or 6 people. An SV is a great way to go.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a fan. Whether it's steaks or chicken's probably the easiest one, because right now chicken's dirt cheap, and you throw some chicken thighs with some marinade or some barbecue sauce, and people show up, you put a beer in their hand, you throw the chicken on the grill for just a few minutes to put a crust on it. And the couple of times I've tried that so far, the response has been phenomenal.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. It's a great way of getting great control. I think that's
yeah.
the key, right? It's funny, as much like good craftsmanship goes in these tech communities, like we talked about boating, grilling has been a major theme of what we've been talking about here on Home Gadget Geeks, which is awesome. And we had Ryan Parker on, actually twice. We've had Ryan Parker talking about these sous vides, and I've yet to try it, but I think this fall is the season for me to get it done.
Yep.
We had Micah on to talk about an air fryer. I need to get one of those for sure.
Yep.
And I think this is one of those areas we're doing some we're going to do some cubed steak and this weekend for my daughter. And I think that'd be a perfect, get it marinated, put that in a bag, because cubes are hard to get right on the grill. Put it in a bag, get it up to the right temperature. It's perfect. Then toss them on the grill to get them, kind of brown. And they're at the perfect temperature. Don't put them on for too long, but they're at the perfect temperature, and it's a great way to do it.
They're safe, they're cooked, they're ready to go. The other observations I've made is, of course, I see other people do this. Is I was first using it with a pot, and I had the pot sitting on the stove, and then it struck me as, why are you even doing the SV deal in the house? Just do it outside by the grill.
Right.
And I've noticed, I basically took a little storage container, a little tote kind of thing, and that's what I've started cooking in now instead of using a pot at all. So, for a barbecue like that, I'm basically doing nothing in the house. I'm preparing all the food outside. We're eating at the patio. It's just a great area. It's fun. I'm probably not articulating it as well as I had hoped to, but it's good food, but it's also, you're reducing the stress around putting it together. And really, barbecue is just a time for people to get together, have a drink, have something to eat, interact with each other. And it makes the thing a whole lot more fun for everybody.
Yeah. And a lot less stress.
Yeah. Absolutely.
A lot less stress. Having an instant read meat thermometer has changed things for me, right, because now you can kind of know.
Yep.
But it's even more control than that. Do you know what kind of brand? What kind of sous vide are you?
I have the Anova. The Anova Nano is the one I have.
Nano. Okay.
Which is it's the cheapy. It's plastic. No Wi-Fi, Bluetooth only. So it was the sub $100 get into a
no, it's a Nano, Nano.
Yep.
Is that right? Yeah. So let me just see if I can find that. I will try and I think this is it, 89, maybe 89 on Amazon. Okay, we'll pull we'll pull a link for that to get into the show notes for those that are listening. If you're thinking about doing it, that's not a bad price point to get in on. That's especially for kitchen gadgets, not a bad place to be. Well, Kevin, thanks again for doing that. It's probably time for me this fall. I've mentioned on the show before, we went HelloFresh back in the spring.
Mm-hmm.
And my daughter, it was interesting. I should have brought this down. My daughter goes, "Hey, Dad," because she's been home for the summer. I made a binder, and she didn't just make a binder, but she separated by chicken, beef, pork. 20-minute recipes require a little bit more work, and then heavy duty, right? And so we've got these, it's like 6 or 9 sections in there of everything. She got it broken down for us. It's almost like she's worried when she leaves because she's been doing all the cooking this summer.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Listen, when your 19-year-old daughter says, I'm taking over the kitchen, like she started, and we didn't plan it that way. She just started doing the cooking, and I was like,
for her.
Well, but it was HelloFresh that got that done for us, right? Because the right ingredients, the right spices, the right proportions. I mean, it's just so perfect. Last week, I threw out a note to everybody, and I said, hey, I get plenty of coupons from HelloFresh to share with everybody. I have 2 ways of doing it. One is I can give you a $40 off coupon. You get 40 off. I get a $30 credit. Or I think it's 2 meals for free, something like that. And I honestly don't care. I just want you to try it. So if you're interested in doing that, let me know. Jim@theaverageguy.tv. Let me know what you prefer. I have a bunch of coupons sitting right here. So they send me these all the time, and I feel bad. I'm like, these, and you can cancel at any time. By the way, super easy to skip. We're skipping 3 weeks in a row. We got a lot of things going on. I just don't want boxes showing up on my doorstep. You go into the app, skip, done. Doesn't show up. You don't get it. It's pretty great. 8 meals to choose from each week. Super easy to cook. One of those kinds of things. And even some grilling recipes that you can, if we got salmon the other day, we grilled it in a skillet. I could have put that on some wood planks and put it on the grill.
Absolutely.
As well. So if you're interested in doing that, let me know. Jim@theaverageguy.tv. I'll get those.
So you nailed it with that too. Is that the big thing with those guys is you get everything you need. You don't have to. You're never digging through the cupboard and saying, "Oh, God, I'm out of that ingredient to make that thing." The other thing that, from a food point of view, I don't know if you have. I don't know if this exists everywhere, but Amazon has the treasure truck. And I'm blown away at how much food they put out through the treasure truck. And if you're an Amazon Prime person, go sign up for treasure truck. They'll hit you with tweets, and they will have 2 or 3 times this year. I've done the treasure truck thing because they've had fresh caught salmon, and it was wonderful salmon at a decent price. And they've had different meat kind of products. And I think they tend to use the treasure truck to go through some of these more perishable types of things. They can get it quickly to the consumer and get it out the door. Yeah. But I was a little blown away that with the treasure truck and how much food went through there.
Mm-hmm. We had tacos tonight, like kind of shredded beef tacos and I never would have thought of this, cucumbers and radishes instead of lettuce, right?
Yep.
And so kind of that crunchy, and it's in the sour cream she made had salt, pepper, and little pepper flakes, the hot red peppers.
Beautiful.
She put those in there. I was like, Kevin, like, this is my 19. And tonight's meal was from scratch. Like it was actually leftovers, but a scratch meal she had made from HelloFresh, a HelloFresh recipe.
Nice.
And so I felt bad. She had a long summer break, and she was supposed to take a class and kind of missed it. And so she did a bunch of arts and crafts stuff this summer, and she learned to cook really, really well. And that's a skill. Not a lot of millennials are getting that skill. And it's a summer, but she cooked. She did burgers not on the grill, but in a cast iron skillet that rivaled anything I'd done on the grill.
Wow.
Nice. Yeah. So anyways, super good. If you're interested in doing that, send me an email, Jim@theaverageguy.tv. A couple just quick reminders. If you want to financially support the show, I mentioned Patreon earlier, theaverageguy.tv/support or patreon.com/theaverageguy. I think gets you there. There's a Patreon link on the page if you want to head out and get that done. We appreciate your sponsorship. there's a bunch of you that do that. And so thank you if you're a Patreon subscriber, thanks for doing that as well. I mentioned the email. You can contact me, jim@theaverageguy.tv. I always announce what's coming up on the show on Twitter. And so if you want to follow me there at J Collison gets that done. Facebook group again, facebook.com/groups/theaverageguy. It wouldn't be a show if we didn't mention Christians. So don't forget the averageguy.tv platform, both web and media hosting, powered by Maple Grove Partners. Get secure, reliable, high-speed hosting, great hosting from Maple Grove Partners. Plans start at $10, and Christian does all kinds of great stuff for you. And so get out there if you need hosting. He's a great small provider, a small business. The dude is amazing. MapleGrovePartners.com. And then I also mentioned, don't forget our app available for you, Android, iPhone. We'll be switching over from LastPass to our Patreon subscribers, unless there's somebody out there who wants to sponsor the app, put their business in front of, I don't know, we probably do 600 to 1,000 downloads every single episode of this. And if you want to get your business out in front of that, you can contact me and we can figure out what the right way to get that done is. We are live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, out here at the AverageGuy.tv live. We'll do a little bit of post-show, a little crypto. Kevin, I'm going to ask you, because you told me you dabble a little bit in it, so we'll talk a little bit about your dabblings in crypto. And with that, we'll say goodnight, everybody.